Come one, come all to the After Dark Podcast. The podcast in which Sheriff Anthony does his best to wrangle Konrad through Westworld, one doggone episode at a time. So kick back and grab yourself some Apple Jack, or some Adam's Ale if that's your preferred poison, and get ready for these two wannabe cowboys to ramble the night away. Music was provided by the fantastic Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot. Enjoy the show!
Now let the road
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark Podcast. I am Anthony James, and that is Konrad.
Hello, you're very chipper today.
Very, very chipper, very chipper. Should have been chipper that last week when we were recording in the morning. I'm more chipper now, even though it's the evening time.
Yeah, I often find that's the case. Like as age withers me back to dust, the spring in my step only occurs when I finish working for the week. Now that's the only thing that can raise me from my perpetual stupor.
It's you know how like I'm sure like people have thoughts about you, like each other, and like you never actually hear what other people think of you. Well, there was one time when I was working in a school in London, and I was like walking in every morning, and I was whistling on the way in or whatever, and one of the teachers actually stopped me and said, "I love how you come into school whistling every day. Like you're happy to be here." And I was like, "Yeah, I am happy to be here."
You're like a goddamn like Disney teacher from the 40s, just like absolutely glad to be there.
And I used to have my guitar in the classroom when I taught primary school too, so it was properly like fairy tale stuff. It was lovely. But not much teaching going on, but a lot of singing, let's say that. But right, guys, we are here to talk about Westworld, and this was a doozy of an episode, if I do say so myself.
Bernard.
You dog.
You dog.
You host.
He's at it again. We'll get into it.
Yeah, I like how I just said, if I do say myself, as if I'm responsible for Westworld.
I do hold you personally responsible for everything I experience while watching this show, to be fair.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, if you recommend your friend to watch something and then they watch it, you may as well have made the show. Like, that's how much credit you do deserve.
It's like, the listeners have no reason to know this, and this is a tangent, so I'm gonna warn you ahead of time. But Anthony and I believe we became our friendship reached new heights when we both kind of realised that we hated the idea of like a YouTube party, where like after a party when everyone sits down and they're like, "Oh, check out this video," and it becomes a game of Russian roulette where at some point the bullet's going to be in the chamber and someone's going to put on a stinker, and at that point there's no return. Everyone's just going to put on bad videos. And that is kind of how I think I see you in the context of the After Dark podcast, where every time we do a new series, you're loading a bullet into the chamber and spinning the cylinder, and maybe we haven't hit it yet, but it's only a matter of time. Maybe that'll be 1899. I doubt it, but
exactly, maybe it will. But the thing is, well, I love that like a little YouTube party analogy here you've got, because I'll tell you what I hate about a YouTube party. It's, you know how some people like story toppers? You know how like you'll tell them a story and I'm like, that actually happened to me as well. And they'll just go on about something. They'll try and story top you. I don't know why people actively go into this in terms of YouTube parties. That's literally what YouTube parties are. Yeah. It's like a boiling down of the story topping. Because instead of telling your own story, you just like click another link and say, here you go, a better video.
It's like, I've watched 40% of your video, and now I'm going to recommend you one which is better than that.
No one's actually watching them.
No.
You just wait, like after a minute in, you're just thinking, oh my God, I'm going to show them this next. I'm going to show them this next.
So, welcome, dear listener, to the internet's version of a YouTube watch party, as we all sit down and hope that we all enjoy this TV show together.
It is true that around season 2, halfway through, people will start getting into the comments saying, oh my God, they're going to do this next, they're going to do this next. So it's exactly the same mentality.
Yep.
Right, guys, there we go. We're going to get into it now. Konrad, what do you think?
Let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
The episode opens with Bernard waking up. Now, before we get into the analysis of this whole episode, I just want to say, on this rewatch, this is the point in which I was like, oh my God, fantastic foreshadowing for the reveal at the end of this episode. As of now, every time we've seen a character wake up at the start of an episode, it's been them waking up at the beginning of their loop. They are a host.
That's a good point, actually. I'd not considered that. To be honest, like, at this point in this episode, the idea that Bernard was a host was percolating away in the back of my mind. And my first thoughts in watching this, and this isn't the first time that we've heard Bernard mention his son who had died.
Yeah.
But I think it's the first time we've seen his son.
We've seen a picture, yeah. First time we've seen
a picture.
Yeah.
But my mind immediately went to, if he is a host, what an incredibly cruel memory to give him. Is this really necessary? And
well, they mentioned that they have to have a drive. They have to have a.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they don't need a drive that's quite as heartbreaking as this, but still, by the end of this episode, we find out that I guess it's all fine. We'll discuss that when we arrive at it. But for the time being, Bernard enjoying a very cruel memory of his now dead son.
Yeah, exactly. So he's with his dead son. There's not really much here. His son's name's Charlie. Bernard lies to him and says, you're going to beat this, I promise you.
Yeah. Textbook father of a sick son stuff right there.
Yeah.
Making promises you have no way of keeping. All of which, as we find out later in the episode, is the work of someone else, let's say, which definitely recontextualizes this entire storyline.
Definitely does. So he wakes up back in the real world, let's say, and it sort of implies he was dreaming that. And we all know, probably on his mind all the time, because we do know he's been sort of talking about his son. He was also talking to his ex-partner. What do you think about that, actually? He was talking to his ex-partner on the TV.
I don't think that's I don't think it's a figment of his imagination. So I feel like either that's another host who is just exists to answer the phone to him, or it is an actor or an actress who, I think a host. They're sort of in for a penny, in for a pound on the host stuff at this point with him. So you might as well have another host playing his wife. I don't.
It only
think
takes 3 days to render.
Yes, exactly. It's like an absolute they can whip one up lickety split if push comes to shove. So I think she's probably a host as well, if I were guessing.
Yeah, it makes sense to sort of actualize his drive or his memory, whereas you wouldn't really do that with the other hosts in the park. Like Teddy's mysterious background didn't need an actualization; it was just in his mind for the longest time.
Yeah.
Whereas Bernard is sort of backstage, and he's hearing about hosts. He's designing their behavior. He sort of needs a little bit extra to convince him that he's not a host. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He needs a little bit of extra sauce to
extra vinegar.
Bit of extra vinegar to stop him from guessing things. Again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I am fascinated to see where his character goes after this, because I guess maybe he just won't remember what happens at the end of this episode, or maybe he will. I don't. Either way, it's not good. Whatever happens. The
question is, did he get the update of the Reveries too?
Yeah, that is a good point. And I mean, why wouldn't he? I guess it's all the first generation hosts who got it right with the Reveries, or was it literally every host?
I think it was just a general software update. Yeah, well, they didn't get around to everyone yet, but yeah, a lot of them did. I don't think it was necessarily just on them.
I would assume he probably did, which makes me wonder what his Reveries were.
Yeah, exactly. All right, okay, cool. So he goes into work and he goes and talks to Hector.
Yep.
Hector.
Hector's tasteful nihilism on display once again in this scene.
Yeah,
market tested to appeal to people who want a bad boy with a heart of gold.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what he is. Old Xerxes himself. He actually said, he actually is getting questioned because a guest to the park told him that he's gonna cut something off and put him on the hood of his car. I didn't catch quite what.
So it was along those lines, yeah. Which there aren't good people that visit this park, and I don't like the idea that they're getting talked to like that by insane people, and they're not like cracking down on it or banning those people from the park. But yeah, but I mean, it hasn't seemingly affected Hector's kind of cognition. It seems like this is part of their sweep of going through the first. I think that maybe I've misunderstood this, but to me they're going through the first generation host to check them for Arnold's stuff that's fucked everything up, based on the revelations from the previous episode. So I'm assuming this is kind of confirming that Hector is a first generation host as well.
I'm not actually 100% sure about that. You might be right. I just was assuming this was like a post game deconstruction of what happened in terms of people referencing the outside world to him, and what Bernard's doing is just making sure that that didn't set him on a path he shouldn't have. Maybe it is because he's a first generation host, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I do like the safety net here of, I'm going to show Hector some pictures of trains and see what he says, and as long as he doesn't say anything weird, that's fine. Like, that passes the checks, which...
Yeah, but also, trains exist in this world. Like, yes, it's a little more sleek looking.
So do cities. You know, I mean, admittedly, they don't look like the city there, but I mean, like, you know, New York existed at this time. You know, it would have been a big city. It seems odd to show them that rather than, like, I don't know, an airplane.
I would love to see the code that they put into these hosts' brains, which makes them recognize what a city of the time is when they see a picture of it, but not a city of modern day. Like, how do they see that and say it doesn't look like anything to me?
Yeah.
But then on the old city, they'd be like, hey, that's New York. Yeah, I heard once had a sister who went there one time. You know, I don't really get how they...
Just like number of lights, probably. It's like, there's too many people in that one. It couldn't possibly be a real thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so also a little bit of tidbit here is that management wants Hector. That's one thing.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, we'll find out why. And then the other thing is that Elsie has started leave today, apparently.
Yes, she's left her mortal life and won't be back.
All expenses paid.
Yeah, they've spared no expense. They've sent her on her way to the afterlife because Elsie is not coming back. I actually don't know if she might. My rule of character deaths is normally if you don't see them die, they're probably not actually dead. But I do think Elsie is tied up in a cave somewhere with what do you put in people's mouths? Like a gag in her mouth. Yeah, or a sock or whatever in her mouth, and probably like a tasteful bit of blood on the temple or something like that, just to let you know that she's been roughed up. And she'll probably turn up at the end of this season.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. I do like Elsie. So,
me too.
All right. Next scene. Bit of poker going on between William and Dolores. Well, Dolores doesn't want to play, actually.
No.
Lawrence is playing, though. El Lazo. Seems like El Lazo's winning to me.
Well, I'm trying to remember what the first hand that we see is. Doesn't William bluff him out or something?
Well, I can't remember. You're right, actually. William was kind of bluffing, but I can't remember if Lawrence folded or maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember. But I mean, it seemed. I wonder how the gambling works in Westworld actually, because presumably it's real money. So could you like just go in and like fleece the park for like $1 million?
Yeah, like, can you come out with more money than you went in?
Yeah,
and you
just
can exchange it back.
Go
to
in
money.
and make your money back on the poker scene in Sweetwater and Pariah. But I mean, clearly, if William is indeed losing, he's not doing that. But I mean, he's a charitable spirit who, doesn't wish to take anything from the hosts, as we find out. No, I'm not going to make that joke.
He took something from a host. I know what you're saying.
He gave something to a host, I think is the...
Yeah. Although on this loop, it may have been her virginity. We never know. We'll never know.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Dolores sees something out the window, and we get hints at the Ghost Nation natives, which is very cool.
Yes. So they're in Ghost Nation territory now. Apparently, the only safe way to get through is with a train, because if you are on foot or on horseback, you won't last an hour, apparently. They are the most savage tribe there is.
Yes. So I quite like this. the kind of realization of this tribe of natives, because it feels like it was written by Lee Seisman, which I think is entirely intentional. Not to say that from what we see of them, it's, you know, maybe there's going to be more depth to these natives than we see in this episode. But the initial presentation of the Ghost Nation is like a kind of 40s Western style savages who scout people, you know, have very little culture themselves, very warlike. It seems like a very kind of stereotypical offensive depiction of Native Americans, and that feels like that very much feels like a kind of a race of people that Lee, an English white guy who like only knows natives from westerns that he's seen, would write, which feels very believable to me.
Yeah, it does to me as well. The thing is, as well, you have to I'm thinking about is that this is really the only community of Native Americans that we've seen in the show. Whereas, like, and they're the savages, you know, so they haven't actually had. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't really noticed, you know, many communities of Native Americans. Maybe there's been one or two in the background here and there.
The one with the doll, but I don't know if that was also a Ghost Nation. They had like the
right,
the hazmat suit doll. But I'm not sure if that was a Ghost Nation child or another unnamed.
I was a member of the cult of Wyatt, but I don't know if they were. They could have been Native American. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so basically, the main portrayal of Native American people in this is just the savages so far. So 100% very believable. Lee Sizemore comes over and says, "I've seen a few westerns. I know what to do.
I've seen Bone Tomahawk. I'm gonna make them all like that." And you know, it's kind of, and in a way, it's almost like a kind of a get out of jail free card for any bad writing, because they're like, listen, it wasn't us, it was Lee.
Yeah. Let's make the writer of the narratives an absolute fool, and then we can get away with anything. He literally pissed on the map.
He did.
All right, so Dolores is trying to locate Elsie on his tablet.
Oh, Bernard. You said.
Did I say Dolores.
Dolores might be as well. We don't know what she's up to.
Yeah, Dolores is Bernard.
Finally,
Dolores.
we've cracked the code.
Yeah. Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay. So yeah, Bernard is looking up Elsie.
Yeah.
And...
So just to briefly interject that this does well. So this when this happened at the time, this put a bit of a sizable hole in my Bernard did it theory. Because I don't know if you remember, but last week I was kind of speculating at who I thought was getting it, and I thought, Bernard would be an interesting twist because he's the one who's getting the phone call, or the lesser Hemsworth. But I don't know. He continues to seem like a pretty one-note character, to be honest. I'd be surprised if it's him. The fact that Bernard is unaware of Elsie's location because he's looking for it in private did put a bit of a hole in it, but then actually on reflection, it does make me wonder whether maybe based on what we learn at the end of this episode, he did it on instruction from someone else and doesn't remember what happened, and will also not remember what he did to Theresa and her skull at the end of this episode.
Yeah, definitely. So in the next episode, he might be having this little tablet looking for Theresa.
Yeah, he'll go and knock on her with like a bottle of wine and some flowers and be like, "Time for love," and then just sit in her room for 8 hours.
Jesus Christ! Yeah. All right, so we'll just wait and see. I think that theory's sort of still alive and well. You know, just because he's doing this here, we're not sure yet. So we'll wait and see. Nowhere to be seen anyway. So he goes to look for Theresa. Now Theresa's having this sort of skulky meeting with someone when he arrives, and then he walks up and talks to her, and basically he's saying that the investigation is over, and he's basically just like trying to sort of say everything's fine, I've dealt with it, and she seems to be pretty happy about this, although not actually that happy about it considering what happens later in the episode.
Yes, I think she. It's interesting with Theresa because she's kind of, to a certain extent, and I'm going to preface this by saying, obviously her character did not deserve to die or suffer physical harm for doing this, but she does kind of make her bed a little bit in this episode by she's forced to make a choice between the board and Ford and Bernard, and she does choose the board. and unfortunately, that turns out to be the wrong choice. But actually, I wonder if there was even a right choice, because I have some thoughts about Tessa Thompson's character in this.
Charlotte Hale.
Charlotte's
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's some interesting things going on about that with that character, which we'll get to very soon actually, because we're almost there. So in the next scene, Theresa goes looking. Oh, she's been called up to management to go for a meeting, and we get a little shot as it goes by. I wanted to mention of the windows in the side of the rock. What do you think about that? This is where their headquarters are. They're in these big things.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like I don't know why. I guess it's just like a vista for a nice view, rather than necessarily like an observation deck of something below. But it's very striking and seems structurally worrying as well, having that much rock above glass. But I'm sure it's fine.
It's quite Dr. Evil, isn't it?
It is. It's very much like, I mean, we don't see the full mountainside that it's carved out of, but it wouldn't surprise me if they had shaped it into like a skull. Frankly,
well, Dr. Evil like this, Anthony Hopkins with his pinky to
that'd be
to his
great.
mouth.
Why do they not do? They should make a new series of Westworld and set it in like Austin Powers 60s era Britain.
Yeah, baby. Okay, so Tessa Thompson's character opens the door.
Yep.
Hector is tied to the bed. She's been having a bit of fun with him.
Yeah.
And Theresa's like, "Oh, I thought I was called up here for a meeting." She's like, "You were."
Yeah.
And I've got this initial entranceway of this scene where they're walking into the room. I've got one note for it.
Go on.
Big dick energy. That's what she's got.
Yeah, because she's completely Billy Bollocks. Like she's she walks up like naked as the day she was born, and I think we've not really seen. I guess we get the introduction with Lee's character to a certain extent, but I feel like this is really the moment where the show wants us to draw conclusions about the kind of character she is going to be. I think you don't present a character as being particularly a woman, but anyone really, being very openly sexual, very openly naked, and very forthright in the threats that they issue, without that meaning something for how you're going to treat their character. So I think, like, my interpretation of this is that Charlotte is kind of a creature of urges who will do what she wants when she wants and won't stop for just about anyone, which certainly is consistent with her position in the company, as a member of the board. That seems like the kind of behaviour you'd associate with a high-ranking person in a company. And I had a kind of shoot from the hip theory. As soon as I saw this, I was like, this seems like the kind of character who's going to kill someone at some point in this series. Because I feel like you don't establish this kind of like wanton disregard for other people and the putting first of their own wishes without it developing into something else. So that was my thought about her character as soon as I saw her.
Well, actually, we could talk about that. It's interesting that theory of yours. We could talk about this now, because otherwise there'll be so much to talk about at the end.
Yeah.
But she mentions here that they're going to require a blood sacrifice.
Yes.
And then at the end, Ford mentions that as well. Now, do you take from that they are some way aligned, or do you take that from that Ford just knew her plan?
No, I did think about that, and I think Ford just knows and is throwing it back in Theresa's face. I think it's him saying he warned Theresa not to get in his way, and her little blood sacrifice is going to happen, but it's not going to derail his narrative, and it's not going to be who she thinks it is. And obviously, and I do actually wonder so there's a couple of interesting things here. First off is that just to get it out of the way, Charlotte mentions that the code base, like the intellectual property she calls it, for the host only exists here, nowhere else. So that was one of my theories of multiple parks existing out the window. Then this idea of a blood sacrifice, I was going back and forth on whether she literally meant it as someone is going to have to get hurt or killed by a host in this new narrative to put the kibosh on Ford's new narrative, or whether it was more kind of just a dramatic way of talking about someone's going to have to get fired or let go to put a stop to this. I'm still not sure which side of that I fall on, but I think given how Charlotte is presented, it might be that they literally did mean someone's going to have to get hurt for this to.
It's an interesting way to put it, isn't it? Like if they did mean just Bernard's going to get fired, it's an interesting way. It's an interesting way to put it, like a blood sacrifice. A little bit hyperbolic, to be honest with you.
Well, and it comes back to haunt them. I think it's fair to say that air of the theatrical does not do Theresa any favors by the end of this episode.
I mean, Theresa really didn't have a good episode here. Let's be honest.
No, she did. She was running. Had her tail between her legs for most of the episode, running around, and then it didn't end well.
No, I love the line from Charlotte Hale where she says, "I like you." I mean, not personally, but
that was a real like Always Sunny in Philadelphia kind of line, that where like someone's just being a complete cock, but at least they're kind of honest about it. So it's it's almost respectable.
Yeah, exactly. We also get the idea that the thing they're worried about is if he's going to retire, Ford's going to retire, he'll snap his fingers and basically just destroy everything.
Just burn it all down. Which he does have the ego to do that, I think, as a character. I think if he was ousted, he would take some getting rid of, and he would do his way out.
Okay, awesome. Next up, we have Maeve waking up again.
Yep, she's a supercomputer now.
She's a supercomputer. She wakes up. She actually doesn't want to listen to the music this morning. Sorry, Konrad.
No, I know. But I mean, it's not. This one wasn't a Radiohead song, I don't believe. Although someone can correct me. I believe Stephen Crummy pointed out another Radiohead song that I missed in the last episode. So maybe this one is one that I'm just not familiar.
This one has been coming back an awful lot, so this might just be like a theme that they've chosen for the morning time.
I didn't spot any. Not to get ahead of ourselves again, but I didn't spot any licensed music in this episode actually. But she Maeve is done with music today. It's not a music listening kind of day. She's woken up like she's suddenly Superman, and I feel like she can hear birds chirping like 50 miles away, and she just wants to plan now and scheme.
Yeah, exactly. And she's also on high alert. Because everyone gets frozen except she doesn't. Like, she doesn't even have to wake us up anymore. She's just like not affected by their commands whatsoever.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
Yeah, it is good. And like based on what we see of Clementine later in this episode, it's a bit like, well, this is gonna go poorly for someone.
Yeah. So Clementine actually gets taken away by the spacemen. And Maeve was holding a knife like she was going to attack them because she thought they were coming for her.
Yeah, she was gonna cut them up.
She was going to cut them up, but luckily they did not. Oh, actually, probably unluckily, because if they did come for her, she cut them up. At least Clementine would still be about, but nope.
Poor old Clementine. Yeah,
one flew over the Clementine there, I think.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in a few scenes' time properly. But that's a character death. If it is indeed a character death that runs the risk of kind of flying under the radar because of what happens at the end of this episode.
Yeah, it's like it's like what happened in the football world in the last couple of days.
Yes, exactly. Like
Manchester City signed Jack Grealish for £100 million, biggest English transfer number ever, and then Lionel Messi just announces that he's leaving Barcelona.
Yeah. It's great. Everyone just immediately forgets he's there.
yeah, it's so funny. Okay, so now we're into Dolores and William again. Interesting development here, I think. So basically, William is becoming infatuated with Dolores to the point where he is seeing what he could be in this park.
Yes.
He says things like when he was young, he had lots of books. And it wasn't until he always wanted to be inside the books, but it wasn't until he got here that he feels like he works up inside of one of his childhood storybooks.
Yeah.
And then Dolores says, well, I don't want to be in a story. So what do you think about this developing relationship between these two?
I think it's very risky. And it's really well done, actually. I really like the way they've kind of... They haven't like shifted the power dynamic fully yet. But William's infatuation with Dolores, and I would say he is, by the end of this episode, he is fully infatuated with her. He's kind of, so is his wife or his fiance, is she called Juliet? Did I hear that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Juliet.
So he is, he tries to do the right thing, I guess, but is kind of overcome by his feelings for Dolores and feels that this is it's a really interesting kind of like depiction of, I guess it's like a codependent relationship where he is infatuated with Dolores, but he's actually more interested in her because of how she makes him like what it brings out in himself, how he feels like himself in this place. And I think what I expect us to see of William's character is, as this relationship progresses, for him to compromise more and more of himself in his attempts to keep Dolores and protect her. And I think we could see the sort of white hat William, who, you know, was very, very clear and principled at the point that he arrived in the park, perhaps shift more to a darker middle ground, or maybe even further than that as the story goes on.
Yeah, like he's starting to sort of become himself in his own words, which is a bit sad actually, because he's such a lovely fella, and if he lets his true self out, or what he says is his true self, it's sort of going down darker roads, as you say. So
yeah,
it's interesting to see where he goes.
He definitely seems like he's willing to compromise maybe some of his principles that he claimed to have in pursuit of this romance, which is going to be interesting, but also quite dangerous, I think. And you know, Dolores has got her own stuff going on as well, which could be troubling for old William.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I just want to say that, you know, this actor, Jimmy Simpson, I think his name is. It's Always Sunny rang him up and said, "Hey, do you want to come back for, you know, do a couple episodes with us this season? You know, drink milk and act like really disgusting." He's like, "I'd love to, but I'm actually going to go to Westworld and, you know, be the star of the show, get the girl." And, you know, what a career this man has turned out to have here.
Yeah, well, he was in, I think before this as well, he was in, I don't know how long, because I didn't watch that much of it, but he was in Mr. Robot as well. So he definitely progressed from, not to say, you know, It's Always Sunny is low tier. Like, I love It's Always Sunny, but in terms of like prestige television, he definitely like is ascending that totem pole. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in movies at some point, because he's obviously got a huge amount of range as an actor.
Yeah, he was in a movie back in the day, back early 2000s. He was in the film Loser with Jason Biggs.
Oh, amazing. Well, there you go. The song or the movie that no one remembers except for the song Teenage Dirtbag.
yeah, exactly. Great film. Yep. Okay, so they do get it on, so to speak. We'll leave them alone for a bit, Konrad.
Fade away. They're getting hot and heavy, and we'll leave them to it in their armored car.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back after the coitus. Okay, so this scene with Charlotte Hale and Ford and the dynamics here, I really like this scene. I think this was a really awesome scene. So basically, Charlotte and Theresa bring in Ford and Bernard, and they're sort of showing them something that's went wrong with Clementine.
Yeah. It's pretty big problem with Clementine, to be honest.
Well, it is a big problem with Clementine, but based on what Bernard says later, it seems like this is actually really interesting. There's so many layers to this, right? Because Bernard says to Theresa later that he could clearly see through this charade and it was clearly wrong. But the fact of the matter is that was Bernard when he was leading her to Ford. So he was probably just talking bollocks.
I don't believe... It's hard because the thing with Bernard is I don't think he is a dishonest character. And I think that while he was I don't think he knew what he was doing when he was leading her to Ford necessarily. I think he was acting on what he interpreted as an impulse, but he didn't quite realize what that impulse was leading to until it actually happened. So I do believe him that there's an element of pageantry to this, but I think in terms of the effectiveness of the scene between Clementine and the guy who beats her up and who then is beaten up in kind, it's a real kind of whiplash moment where, and this show is really good at them actually, where suddenly things just get really violent and you're kind of reminded. It's almost like it is a bit kind of Jurassic Parky, and obviously Michael Crichton wrote the book that this is based on, in the sense that occasionally you are reminded that these are wild animals and they can do very significant damage to you. And in Westworld, you are occasionally reminded that these things are very strong, very intelligent, and perfectly capable of harming you if things go wrong. And I think that's what you kind of get in this scene, in the early part of this scene, where first Clementine, who is a character that we know and love, just is brutally assaulted, and then immediately just gets her own back with some moves that I don't know where they came from. That's the bit I think that is kind of farcical, that she's learned like karate or whatever, or like learned MMA in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever. Based on the moves he did to her, or she remembered. Yeah, she just like was able to do this. Like, why did they? If they wanted her just to be like sort of a helpless prostitute who's saving money for her family, why didn't they not give her karate skills? Yeah, that would have been the thing to do. Like, maybe don't let all of them know martial arts. But I think that is actually the part. If we reflect upon what we've seen so far, like the weapons privileges for the woodcutter and stuff, like all those
karate privileges.
Stuff, yeah, there's no way they have karate privileges. There's no way. Like, it has to have been the board getting involved here.
Yeah, I just love the idea of karate privileges. Maybe Maeve did it. Maybe Maeve, whenever she was like, pop it up to 20. She's like, she just randomly like, Clementine, put her karate skills up to 20.
Yeah, we missed a scene where they were doing like a Mulan style training sequence in the brothel.
Yeah. Oh god, shame we missed it. So anyway, we've got the Lesser Hemsworth. He gets another little scene here. He's been out for a while actually.
He's doing his like Chris Pratt like blue thing. Like he's putting his arm out like this, like settle. It's just like she's not a fucking dog. Like just
this is basically the story of Joe Exotic. Like this is like from Tiger King. Like they're in this enclosure with this tiger, and like all of them are like, this guy actually has his head screwed on, whereas the rest of them are like, no, they're my best friends. I've had them since they were babies. It's like they're gonna fucking kill you.
Yeah. Now this, I mean, I do feel like the Lesser Hemsworth is actually one of the more reasonable characters in this situation, and it's just like, I'm just gonna shoot Clementine actually.
Yeah.
But it's still, the way he acts is so funny, because it's just like, Clementine doesn't look particularly dangerous. She's wearing her, I don't know what those outfits are called that they wear in like old timey kind of Western brothels. Like the frilly lacy things.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
Ava.
Yeah, get her on.
She would know.
But she's wearing one of those. She doesn't look like a threat, and yet he treats her like a tiger.
He does. A little bit of stripes to the uniform. You never know. But basically, there's a little bit of science mumbo jumbo here as well. It kind of makes sense. Is that because these reveries like change things, so as they keep remembering things, and go through the cycles, eventually it leads to the overruling of like the primary rule set.
Yeah.
So like the primary rule set, which we know is one of them, is like they don't hurt humans.
Yeah.
So it can lead to that being overruled.
So it's essentially that, like, well, my understanding of it was because the reveries rely upon them having memories, it allows them to essentially remember all of the trauma that is inflicted to them by hosts or other people, and then circumvent that core programming somehow, which that's fine. I'm less bothered about that than some of the techno mumbo jumbo we've had in the previous 2 episodes, to be honest, because I was like, you know what, that's fine. I don't know what your code base looks like. that seems like a real problem, but whatever. I'm not going to judge your code.
It's just broken code, basically. Somehow they're still able to function even though the core rule set are broken.
I had a question for you here.
Okay.
At the end of this scene, does Bernard take the fall for full? Is this what this is? Because it's what it feels like to me.
Yes.
Like, he has an opportunity to be like, well, he's the one who fucking did it.
Yeah, so I took it that way too. Like, he doesn't rat him out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't yet anyway.
Yeah, so I wonder if that is again. It's all the end of this episode has balls everything up because now I'm just like, well, how much of this is him doing it? And I guess this is the question at the very center of Westworld as a show. But it asks the question, how much of this is his own free will talking, and how much of this is he doing under instruction from Ford? I simply don't know. But if Ford
it's just like it's in the core mechanics of him too. Maybe he can't speak against Ford. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's why.
maybe.
That's why the whole time, even like whenever Elsie was saying about Ford at the beginning of the thing, saying he's crazy, and Bernard was always like, "Let me go talk to him."
Yeah.
And he just never actually spoke against him.
Yeah, it could easily be that. I mean, you've got characters like Teddy who will not let him be physically harmed. It stands to reason that there are characters like Bernard who, while also not letting him be physically harmed, will also defend him in a kind of political environment.
Yep, exactly. So there was a moment of passion between William and Dolores.
Oh.
It goes without saying.
Yeah.
But in the morning, he doesn't regret it. He is kissing her again. He's saying, I really found who I am. I love the look on Logan's face when I ran away from him or whatever. Dolores is unlike any woman that he's ever been with.
That's true.
He said, I think it was something like, yeah, I know. But I think there was something, I can't remember the actual setup to it, but it was something like, you unlock parts of me that I never thought were there or something like that. And then Dolores says, I'm not a key, William.
I mean,
he keeps saying these things,
it is a dangerous relationship because he is infatuated with her, but he doesn't. It's an interesting. It reminds me a lot actually of the movie. I don't know if you ever saw this movie, Ex Machina.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
So it's Donald Gleason and Oscar Isaac, and basically I won't give anything away, but Donald Gleason is like I think he's a low-level employee of like a tech company, and they do a competition or something where like the sort of reclusive billionaire owner invites someone to come and stay with him, and it's revealed that he has an AI robot living with him, and it's essentially about different kinds of possessiveness, and Oscar Isaacs is very overt. He's like, this is my robot, she's my property, etc., etc. Whereas Donald Gleason falls in love with her and tries to exert his will on her in a more what's the word I'm looking for? He's not malicious about it. He's not trying to be controlling, but he still is trying to control her actions. And I feel like William is kind of slipping into that role here a bit as well, where he has talked a good game up until quite recently about how, he doesn't want to make the hosts do anything they don't want to do. He doesn't want to control them. He doesn't want to kind of subject them to what everyone else in the park does. And yet, at this moment, even though Dolores is willing, sexually speaking here and romantically speaking, he is still projecting onto her the expectation that she will help him self-realize and become the man that he thinks he actually is. Which is a really risky thing to do in any relationship, let alone with a fucking murderous robot, frankly.
yeah, exactly. Like, he's using her as a tool for his own his own development.
He sees her as less of a person than he did at the start of this story, I think. And I think that relationship is only going to go in one direction from here.
Yep. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. We do also get a moment where she's drawing, and
she's on like a sheet or something. Is it? Like
she's
What? How
Why
on
not?
earth does she draw on that?
I don't even have the hand up the back or anything to give a bit of support.
Listen, I went to a painting class not 2 weeks ago, and I can tell you right now, I'm a bad artist at the best of times. Drawing on an unsupported sheet with charcoal, unbelievable. What? Like she's like one of the greatest artists of her age, and they've got her locked away here.
Well, she's the perfect woman. She's
that is true. Yeah.
They've literally programmed her, to be able to do this. I don't know why they put in that she should be able to draw on an unsupported piece of material, but Clementine got karate skills. Dolores got this skill.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay. So train time. So it goes outside. They got blocked by rocks. Somehow the Confederados got all the way, beat the train.
Beat the train.
And beat the train through, like, they've been on the train for a while now, to the point where it's the next morning inside of Ghost Nation country.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to last an hour in Ghost Nation country, but they have. They've actually managed to go down, put rocks on the train track, go back away again, and then come back to surprise them.
This is one of those moments in cinema where you just can't think too hard about what's happening, because it doesn't make any goddamn sense, any of this. But I mean, I will say, I accept all of those arguments that this is really fucking stupid, because it is. And I will respond to those by saying, yeah, but Lazo does get to say "Vaya con Dios, motherfuckers," and then shoot a body full of nitroglycerin and blow them all up, which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Oh, I will say, my first thought whenever this happened was, didn't work as well as it could have. Like, let's be honest.
No, it doesn't at all. Like, it's a pretty poor explosion, all things considered. I mean, and you know, I'm not a scientist. I don't know what filling a body with nitroglycerin will do. But I mean, I mean, I suppose El Lazo isn't a scientist either, so it stands to reason that maybe he thought this was going to be more spectacular than it actually was. I will say that the image of a clearly dead body, Weekend at Bernie's its way towards the Confederado lines, and not a single one of them being like, that's clearly not a dead. Like, they got like a pulley system set up where like Lazo's got like a fishing rod from the train that it's pulling, so it can like wave its hand like as it approaches it. Like, it's clearly not a living person.
Yeah, it's like in Home Alone, you know, like all the Michael Jordan cutout going by and everything.
It's so good. It's so stupid.
If the plan was just to run away, why didn't they just get out of the train on the other side?
Yeah, none of this makes sense. And like, basically, what happened here was they thought, it's been a little while since we've had like an action sequence. Let's bring that Gatling gun back for another round. Also, apparently the Confederados don't care about getting their nitroglycerin back, because they just start firing into the side of the train.
Yeah, they're just gonna kill everyone. Yeah. You could have actually done two things, like kill them and get your stuff back that you needed for the war effort. But okay, apparently not. So yes, a chase ensues. So Dolores falls off the horse, gets on with William. They're riding. What I want to point out to you, Konrad, is when Ghost Nation arrive and start killing all the Confederados, right? There's a blink and you'll miss it moment. But I'm going to put the screenshot on the screen here. So anyone listening to this on YouTube, look at the screen.
Okay.
Look at William's little smile when he's watching these people get ripped apart from the Ghost Nation.
I didn't notice him smiling, to be honest. But, I mean, I've said William is headed down a darker path. And maybe this is the moment where it's like, you know what? Logan was right.
Yeah.
I do like killing things, actually, as it turns out.
It's really interesting that decision to have him just sit and like smile.
Yeah.
And I think Dolores is like, "Come on, William, let's go." And he's just like, "Oh yeah." I was gonna watch these guys just get killed. But yes, okay. So they're off. They survive. The Confederados are long gone.
Yeah.
And they make it to. It's really interesting. This has been set up like literally 10 minutes ago. It's like immediately after the setup, you get it. The place that she drew, that she made up, according to her, is actually there. So
this is the Grand Canyon, right? This must be the Grand Canyon that they're filming at.
Yeah, either that or just green screen. But yeah, it looks like pretty good. Like, to be honest,
it's just interesting that like the Grand Canyon doesn't exist in the world of Westworld.
Yeah, well, it does actually, because it's here, but no one calls it that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they went out to the Grand Canyon. I'm not sure. Actually, whenever I was at the Grand Canyon, we the part where we were, you could go right up to the edge like they do in the show. But you could literally, there was people sitting with their legs over the edge, right? And I was like holding onto the rail of the thing, like going up, and just like not even going like not even within 3 meters of the edge. And I was like, oh my God.
That's what I'd be. I get vertigo when I'm like 20 feet off the ground. I like at the Grand Canyon, I'd be like, nope, I trust that it's there. I cannot do this.
But also how, like, I will say about the Grand Canyon, right? It is like everyone always says, when you go, like you will be all like dumbfounded at how big it is. And I was like, oh yeah, fair enough. I've seen it in films a lot. It'd be fine. When I went there, I was honestly, I was like, what the hell? This is huge. It really is. It really is mental being there. But I will say, I was there like 4 years ago at this point. But in the last year or two, sadly, I've actually, like Ema read it, she told me about it. The exact spot we were standing where we were afraid to go close, someone fell in over there and died.
Oh, okay. So what have they now put?
They
like,
must be
railings
more.
up or something?
They must have to now.
Yeah.
But that someone actually did fall, and
I
I thought everyone was going to fall the day I was there. I was like, what are you doing? Like 14-year-olds taking selfies with the legs over the edge.
I feel like if you let people just hang out on the edge of a sheer drop down into an enormous canyon, it's only really a matter of time until someone falls in. So I'm kind of surprised that was even allowed then, but that's a shame. Grand Canyon is one of those things that I would absolutely love to see, but I would be very timid going to it because I do not do well with heights.
Yeah, I didn't even want to do like the skywalk where you walk out over the glass bridge. I didn't even want to do that.
Couldn't do it.
Okay, so William decides to part ways with El Lazo, and they're going to go down into this sort of unclaimed land, which apparently Dolores remembers. I will say that whenever I first watched this show and she was drawing a new place, I was like, oh my god, she's drawing a new place. She has an imagination now. And then like 10 minutes later, that thought was quelled because it was like, oh no, it's just like a memory or something, you know what I mean?
So is the... I know this hasn't really been confirmed, so your answer to this is probably just going to be silence. But when I saw this, I was like, Ford has been digging out a big old canyon. Is that what this is? Because this looks a lot older than, the disturbed ground that Ford is ploughing out. But maybe they're reseeding it with, trees and stuff as they go. So that was my thinking as the Grand Canyon was revealed.
I'm not going to say either way, but I will say that throughout like the little dialogue of the hosts, like the inbuilt dialogue, as well as like the image you see of that map and the maze you see, whenever you, like all that stuff that sort of keeps recurring in their lives, almost pointing them in a place. Maybe Teddy saying that he's going to take her to a place where the water meets whatever. Maybe him saying that to her is sort of trying to point her in this direction. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe they all have aspects in their storylines which try and point them to a certain thing.
Yeah, I wonder... I think that probably is true, because there does seem... There's certainly an element of Bernard, and by extension probably a Ford as well, that wants them to escape, that wants to see what happens once they kind of realise where they are and what they're doing. That kind of like... It's not even morbid curiosity, I guess. It's more just fascination with having potentially created sentient life. So yeah, I think that probably is the case, that they're all being led to whatever it is he's creating.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So only a couple of scenes left. This next one is basically Maeve wakes up again under Felix's care, and then Felix she demands Felix take her up to where Clementine is. Yeah. Now, there's a few things that happen here. Felix says, which I love, he goes, I can't go up there. The brass are up there. Like so the term "the brass" I thought was funny. Yeah. I love Felix pulling that one out. But also, I love that Maeve is just like, you don't want to fuck with me, Felix. Yeah. Take me there now.
Felix is like, Felix picking this moment to be like, actually, I think this might not be a good idea. It's like, you've already... The toothpaste is out of the tube, Felix. Like, you can't... You've decided that this is what you're going to do. You can't just be like, actually, can you just go back to being a sex robot now? Please, Maeve. And then, to compound the misery, Maeve has to watch her friend be lobotomized, which is probably not going to endear her to any of the humans who work at Westworld, I'm assuming.
Definitely not Sylvester, let's be honest. Yeah. It had to be Sylvester doing it, didn't it?
Yeah, there was like the Benny Hill theme playing in my head when he was like, the look on his face when he was like, oh, I'm going to lobotomize Clementine while Maeve is watching. This isn't going to end well for me. It's like, no, it is not, Sylvester. I suspect you will not make it far in this line of work.
Oh my god! Just Felix walking around a naked Maeve everywhere. It's just, it's absolutely mental. Like, see, if I was Felix, I would just be like, I quit. I'm leaving.
This
like,
is too much.
I would just see my death my death being imminent at this point.
Yeah, like there's a supercomputer robot who has just watched you commit a horrific act of violence on her best friend. You just leave. Just hand in your P45 and get out of there.
P45. Okay, so Bernard comes up to Theresa, as we said before, and says the test was a sham. Tells her that he knows about the satellite transmission. Love her face.
Yes.
I love her face when he does that. I thought the actress did a great job in showing just absolute, like, kind of embarrassment, fear, load of different emotions in, but it was probably like, I've been caught out, you know?
I do wonder if she had, like, so when I first saw that, I was like, I wonder if she's being set up with that as well. Because as I said before, I totally agree with you that that's what her face read like to me, but she doesn't seem
Charlotte
like the kind
mentioned
of
it
character.
earlier. Charlotte mentioned it earlier, saying that's why we want the data out of the park, because we can't have it be only here.
Oh, maybe I missed that. Okay, it's fine, because I was still thinking at this point that Theresa just doesn't seem like the type to, you know, commit corporate espionage. But yeah, if Charlotte mentioned it, I guess I probably just missed the build to that reveal.
But she's also not actually committing corporate espionage, because it's her own board asking her to do something.
Yeah, that's true.
So in her mind, it's very easy to convince yourself that it's a moral thing. Okay, so Bernard says that the hosts are on the verge of some sort of change. She puts her hand on his arm. Blah blah blah. They go to the house.
Yes. So as soon as I see them coming up in the kind of British woodland, my first thought was, as I'll give you a kind of play-by-play of what old Konrad's brain was doing as this was going on. So my first thought, and I'm going to be honest here, was that, is he going to get the Scottish guy to hurt her? Because his voice commands didn't work on the Scottish guy. Yeah. So I was like, maybe he's going to do something with the Scottish guy, like Ford's dad, to get him. Then there's the moment where they're in the house. It seems like it's empty. Yeah. Presumably the family have gone elsewhere. And he talks about how the hosts do the mapping for them, which does seem a little bit like kind of inmates running the asylum, if you're just like... But and you know, they literally couldn't see this if they wanted to. And then there's a really interesting little moment, and maybe I'd misinterpreted this, but where Theresa is like, "Oh, what's behind this door?" and he just says, "What door?" and it's like, he isn't. It's really well done because he's not really looking, so it comes. It could just be, he's kind of disinterested, and you know, he's focusing on something else. But as soon as that moment happened, I was like, fuck. Bernard, like, he's coming for you. He can't see the door.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And the thing is, as well, I'm pretty sure that is, we've talked about before, especially in the show Dark. We've talked about before, like, you know, there's a lot of subtle clues leading up to reveals, but right before the actual reveal, they lay it on a plate for you, just so you can still feel like you got it.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. They set it up for you and let you spike it, and then this is, you know, this remote diagnostic facility is also where he's been talking to Dolores, which to me says that none of that has happened yet, because he literally didn't know this was here. So every conversation he's had with Dolores, I guess, is technically yet to happen, which changes my perspective of Dolores as a character a lot, actually. You know, where she is at the moment to where she will eventually get to, based on the conversation she's having with Bernard, and what prompts those to start happening as well. There's so many questions that come out of just that aspect of this.
We did see, sorry, Konrad, we did see her being taken out of the like the sort of Day of the Dead style parade. We saw her being taken away from there and then talked to. So do you think those two instances are not actually connected in the same time, or what are you talking about?
I feel like every time we've seen Dolores have a conversation with Bernard in this room, it can't have happened because he doesn't know this is here. So, well, I guess, okay, I'll say...
Oh, actually, potentially... Sorry, I might be wrong. I think that she spoke to Ford at that moment when she was taken away there.
I think you're right. I think she does speak to Ford in that moment, yeah. So that that happened, and the conversation she had with the Lesser Hamsworth, I think earlier on, that's happened. And I think she has actually had one conversation with Bernard that's in like the main kind of facility, maybe in like the first or second episode. So I think those have all happened, but the bulk of the conversations she has had with Bernard, I think, are yet to happen at this point, which does make me wonder when's that going to come up, or maybe he just doesn't remember it, and I'm just reading too much into this because he can't remember things that happen in this room because of memory blocks or whatever. But then we get the real money shot of this scene. That's right, it's Naked Bernard blueprint. If you ever wanted to know what Naked Bernard looks like, you get half of it. You get half of the goods.
Half the goods, half the inside of his body. So,
yeah, everyone's happy. Like keeps everyone happy. And he says it doesn't look like anything to me, which is, I think the door moment is them kind of like slapping you on the head and being like, "Oi, look, something's about to happen." And then it doesn't look like anything to me is their kind of like last call for getting on board with this theory, because it's like you've got about 5 seconds before the reveal. Well, I suppose the reveal has already happened at this point because it's clearly Bernard in the blueprint.
I also want to say the artist who drew this for the show was very kind to the actor.
Listen, we don't really know. He could be like that underneath there.
Yeah, it could be.
If I was in this role, I'd be like, up until this scene, I'd be visiting that artist every day, being like, "Let me see," and then I'd be giving him tips. I'd be like, "No, bigger than that."
Yeah, make sure you get the bone V. Make sure you get the bone V.
Get the David Beckham abs there. That's what I want. And then bring him like pictures of like Chris Hemsworth's chest and be like, that's what this needs.
He's done well. He's done well for himself there, Jeffrey Wright. Okay, so we've actually skipped the Maeve scene, but we'll go back to it after. So once you see the picture, you sort of hear Anthony Hopkins off screen, and he says, "They can't see what will hurt them. I've spared them that." There was real evil guy, like bad guy vibes in this scene from Anthony Hopkins.
Like he's Anthony Hopkins is a good villain at all times. He's a great villain, and he properly plays the man who wants to play God freely in this scene so well. And it's a great performance from the actress who plays Theresa as well, because I think it's pretty obvious that Ford's mind is already made up. He already knows what he's going to do in this scene before she even arrives, really. And it's got that kind of slow creeping sense of dread, both in kind of the tone of the scene and in the performance, as she realizes you might be in trouble here because you're like physically outnumbered by two men here. And then she, in a classic line, and I would love to see the analysis of the number of times someone has uttered these words and either survived or kept their jobs, because I bet it's not much. She says, "The board won't stand for this," which I feel like any time, whether it's like Catwoman getting thrown out of shortly before like Catwoman gets thrown out of a window in like Batman Returns, or like anything like that, if you say the board won't stand for this, you're about to get killed most of the time, or fired, but most of the time I think you're about to get killed. And so it is with Theresa, and then we get the return of the blood sacrifice, and then it's a really kind of like inglorious death as well, which I think is really, really affecting as well. Just very brutal, and the way that is it Jeffrey Wright? You said the name of the actor.
I think his name is Jeffrey Wright.
Like his performance is actually really good as well. His ability. I mean, this is a show that's full of people who have a great ability to switch their character at the drop of a hat to play hosts when they are in their pretending to be real mode, and hosts when they're in their like waiting to be commanded mode. And I think Bernard here, it really did like send a chill down my spine the moment where like I can't actually remember now what Ford says to him, Is it like take care of it?
He says that's enough, Bernard. Oh, at the very yes.
Before he actually attacks her, he doesn't actually explicitly say.
It's something as oh, it's time for it now, Bernard, or I'm gonna go away now, Bernard, or something. It's something very interesting like that, isn't it?
Yeah, but then like just the facial expression drops. He takes his tie off, takes his jacket off, just marches up to her, and she like begs for her life, and he just caves her head in against the wall. And it's very like it's a horrible end to a relationship where two characters genuinely seem to have affection for each other despite their professional differences at times.
Yeah, and Anthony Hopkins also says, "And in that sleep, what dreams may come." Sort of very, very creepy. He also says, "Now this is the moment we'll go to the Maeve scene after this, but there's a moment where Anthony Hopkins really putting his villain persona on. He says, the hosts are the ones who are free here, under my control."
Yeah, yeah. That is a full on Dr. Evil kind of line there. It's like there's no wiggle room for interpretation. It's like, okay, yeah, so the only person who could ever run this is you and you alone, and you need absolute control in order to ensure that the hosts get what's best for them, which is demonstrably not true based on how they are treated, and not true of the people who work for him either, based on what's happened to what I suspect has happened to Elsie and what has just happened to Theresa here.
What's very interesting is that the way the show is sort of setting it up, like you say that like William is going through some changes and stuff, but I do still like him at this point. Yeah. But it is really setting it up that the only characters in this show that we're on the side of are the hosts, really.
Yeah, I would say so. I actually think I'm kind of on the Man in Black side a little bit.
We don't really know what his motives are yet, do we?
I feel like the Man in Black, you know where you stand with the Man in Black. Like he's monstrous in what he does, but he's at least honest about what he does. Whereas I think the duplicity of a lot of the human characters is what makes them so difficult to like. So Charlotte is the kind of scumbag corporate type whose motives are unclear. Same goes for Lee. I guess you could say the security guy is very straightforward, but I feel like he's not going to be a very major character. Ford is just a bundle of insecurities and god complexes all rolled into one. So yeah, I mean the host, the person obviously apart from Theresa in this scene that I really felt for. Obviously, there's only 3 people in this scene, and I'm not going to feel for Ford. But I mean, is Bernard as well? What happens to him when he wakes up and remembers what he's done, or wakes up and doesn't remember what he's done? And it's just like, Theresa's gone on leave with pay as well. What am I gonna say?
They're all going on leave. Eventually, he's just gonna be there on his own.
Yeah, just like looking around. Like, we've let a lot of people go on holiday at the same time, haven't we?
yeah. So who okayed this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm really, really looking forward to. We're gonna go to the Maeve scene in a second, but I just want to say that we've had our first reveal. We've had our first, person who we thought was a person is now a host. So like, is there going to be more Konrad? Is my question to you.
Come on. Yeah. There's got to be. There's going to be
people that we know now in the show. Is what I mean. All the characters we know now. Is there someone who is a human? Who is actually a host still in there somewhere? Maybe it'll happen with new characters we meet eventually, but is it going to happen with a character we already know?
I feel like they wouldn't pull this trick too many times because it would lose its impact. So I think of the characters we have at the moment, I don't think any of those are also hosts. But that doesn't mean that there won't be characters they introduce later who turn out. Actually, there's got to be at least one more. They've got to do this at least once more. Come on, it'd be crazy not to. But I'm not sure who it is. But I mean the idea of what is identity, what is life, is so central to this show that I feel like they'd be crazy not to go back to this well at least once more, if not more than that. Okay,
awesome. And last scene then is just this is the second last scene, but we're going to go back to it. Sylvester is now with Maeve and Felix.
Yep.
And there's a great little back and forth here of Sylvester trying to be like, I had to do it because, like, you know, if I didn't do it, someone else would do it. And then he's like, I did it for you.
Yeah.
Like, what
It's
is he
better
trying to
that
do
someone gentle did it. Like,
Yeah.
better that I did it. Better that it came from a place of love than one of the other butchers here in the chop shop. And unsurprisingly, Maeve is not swayed by by this argument, and begins to talk to them about how many times they've died. and saying she's done it a lot. She's gotten quite good at it. And drops the big. Well, it's not even really a reveal because we all saw it coming. But if you don't help me, I'll kill you. Which who could have possibly seen this coming? It's just like these two are just complete idiots. Like, of course, this was the natural end point of this.
Absolutely.
At some point, call a manager and just be like, "Listen, I know we're not supposed to talk to the host, but mistakes were made, and we may have turned one of them into a genius. Can you call the boys in security?"
But put a bulk apperception down to 0, please.
Yeah. Drop that, and then call one of the karate robots in to to beat her up.
Yeah, or Sylvester's like, I'll do it for her.
Yeah, I feel like Felix and Sylvester, they're just lackeys. They're Disney lackeys. They're like Flotsam and Jetsam in The Little Mermaid. They're gonna swim around with Maeve and eventually get killed. I think Flotsam and Jetsam die in The Little Mermaid. It's been a while since I've seen that. They're not going to do well.
I can't remember if they die. I'm pretty sure they probably don't. Right, okay. Let's then move into the roundup.
Okay,
Konrad,
let's do it.
IMDb rating, 9.5. They love a reveal, Konrad. They love a reveal.
It was always going to be that way. It was always going to come to this. Like, you get a big reveal. That sends the fans home happy, and I think that's deserved. It was an episode of not all that much, narratively speaking. I guess like the Bernard stuff is actually pretty important, narratively speaking, but the host stuff didn't really move that far forward in this episode. But the Bernard stuff was very, very compelling from start to finish. We get to see Ford be a true villain. We get to see the ignominious end of Theresa. It was really, really good.
Yep, awesome. I agree. I think it was a really, really good episode. And just makes me even more excited for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Okay, so any new theories? There was at least one of them I heard.
So it's only a couple, really. So the first one is quite broad, which is that I think William's infatuation with Dolores is going to result in his character kind of taking a darker turn to try and save her. Tessa Thompson's character will have killed someone by the end of this show. I'm sticking to my guns on that. And I suppose I could say as well, I think Elsie is still alive at this point. Excuse me.
Okay.
We haven't seen a body, so I'm saying she's still alive.
Okay, awesome. Great theories. Looking forward to seeing how they get on. What about one or two questions then, Konrad, from our lovely audience?
That would be tremendous.
Okay, first question from Adventurous Rover. Says, hey lads, question for both again. If you were to discover that you were a host, how do you think you would react? I know how I'd react. You know how I'd react?
Hey, go on.
Like that.
That's almost. I think so. Like, there's two sides of my brain to this. The kind of liberal hippie in my brain is like, I'll just be fine with it. Move on. Be like, get on with it. We're all ultimately, living creatures. Let's just coexist and it'll be fine. I think the reality is there'd probably be a fairly long period of existential questioning that would go on after that. Questioning, because you'd literally have to question every decision you've ever made as to whether it was your choice or the choice of the person who programmed, or indeed the host who programmed you. So it wouldn't be an easy thing to adjust to. I think that's safe to say. I tell you the first thing I would do actually after that, I'd go through that initial period of adjustment, and then I would bust out some of that sweet karate.
yeah.
Like
Put your karate skills up to 20. yeah. So your karate skills are currently 11, and your bulk apperception is 13. If we put your karate up to 20, your bulk apperception will have to come down to 2.
That's fine.
Bump it up.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Don't need that. I just want to be able to a sweet roundhouse. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. I think personally, I've got I can't get past the word react there, because we're at the end of the episode, Konrad. I'm sure we've only got regular listeners listening now, so I could go into this. A few weeks ago, I started change. You might have noticed I changed the name of the episodes to, instead of being reaction or react, I put discussion and analysis, because I got a couple of people complaining about like my use of the word reaction. Because apparently in YouTube terminology, reaction means you literally have to be watching it at the moment that you're talking about it, which completely throws my mind off the deep end, to be honest with you, because that means whenever you like a news reporter goes, let's go to so and so for their reaction. It's like you don't go to a politician and then watch them watching something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not what the word means.
Yeah, I can see the argument that like a reaction means something very specific on YouTube, but I'm also just like, that word has broader meaning than just on YouTube. Like, I'm reacting to a discussion about this show right now.
I was using it as like a journalistic meaning of the word.
Yeah,
reaction.
well, we bring that highbrow kind of Pulitzer style writing and dialogue to podcasting.
We do, and to be quite honest with you, we do go through the episodes bit by bit. So we are. It's more of a reaction than someone who just like talks about the 3 favorite things or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, that's a little bugbear. So guys, if you notice that we changed the name of it, that's why we did, because I didn't want to piss off the YouTube gods, you know. So that's what we did.
Yeah, keep them sweet.
Keep them sweet. All right, let me see. Marvin with a lovely question here. I love this question because it's a real character thinking one. Do you think the Man in Black was a black hat or a white hat on his first visit to the park? Because you know how he said he's been there a lot of times? Yeah. Did he just come in all guns blazing first go? Like,
I feel like you get bored of that, though, wouldn't you? Like, Logan is a classic black hat entry point
from the
guy.
From
He's
the
just
start,
like, listen, I'm gonna go crazy, and then just gets arrested and beaten up in a jail cell in Mexico, and leaves and probably tries to sue the park because he's upset. I think, based on what we know about the Man in Black, or based on what we have seen of the Man in Black, the implication that he works for some kind of like philanthropic organization, maybe medical in nature, that helps people, and the fact that he does seem to have some desire to help in his own twisted way, help the host in his own twisted way. To me, his character screams of some kind of like misguided morality, which probably started as legitimate morality and was twisted through either heartbreak or just banging your head against something for years and years and not succeeding, or something along those lines. So I think it would be much more interesting for his character to have been a white hat. So just to, kind of look at that idea of, if even like the best of us, not to say that he was necessarily the best of us, but if even a fundamentally good person can be corrupted into what the Man in Black has become, then it can happen to any of us, and kind of ask those like moral questions of the audience. I think that would be quite interesting.
Okay, awesome. Just one or two more then. The first one comes from Vic Disco. And he says, why would William be willing to sacrifice everything to fall in love with Dolores? And now that they have fallen for each other, what will the future bring them? Are they doomed, or is there hope?
Well, I think we've kind of touched on it. Whereas I think, obviously Dolores is a very beautiful woman and has a personality that he clearly is attracted to. But I think it's more what she brings out in him, like that he feels is his true self. I think that's really what he's in love with, and that's why I think their relationship is doomed to fail, because ultimately Dolores is a person I think. Like, that's kind of where I come down on the hosts at this point. Like, they are living, sentient beings. Certainly the ones who've, like, fully woken up, become self-aware are, like, your Maeves and Dolores, presumably by the time she's talking to Bernard, is the same. So the fact that he sees Dolores as a... Even if he doesn't realise this himself, the fact that he sees Dolores as a means to achieve his own perfect self, I think means that relationship isn't going to end well. Yeah, I just don't see how it's possible for William to go down this path, and I think in going down this path he is going to lose Dolores. I just don't see how he avoids that.
Okay, very interesting. And last couple of questions from Handsome Headandry. First one is, who's more cruel, the Man in Black or Ford?
Oh, Ford, 100%. Every day of the week it's Ford. Like, the Man in Black, it inflicts violence, but, like, he knows that they're... Like, he inflicts violence because for a start, he knows they're getting back up again, the next day. And he doesn't,
Ford just killed a human woman.
Yeah. And he doesn't kind of existentially torture them as well. He inflicts violence on them, and whether his reasons are actually valid or not, we don't know yet. But he certainly has some degree of justification in being able to say, look, I'm trying to free you from these the what you're bound to. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the way he's doing it, or even that is his true motivation. But if you look at Ford, like, Ford is like a kid with a magnifying glass burning ants. He's just he doesn't view the hosts as anything more than his playthings to play God with. And that is far more monstrous than any individual act of violence that the Man in Black could ever commit.
Okay, interesting. One part about it as well that we didn't actually really touch upon much, because I suppose we have seen some violence towards humans from hosts already, but Bernard killing Theresa is 100% guarantee, or like proof, that under the right direction or under the right coding, hosts can kill humans. So that is a thing to think about for the future too.
I mean, that's more or less... I was already pretty convinced of it, but it's more or less solidified in my mind that Ford definitely had a hand in Arnold's murder and probably got a host to do it, and I think the host was probably Dolores, based on all the evidence we have about that. So, I mean, I don't think this is the first time he's killed a human. I don't think it will be the last time he kills a human, or commands, I guess, someone else to kill a human.
Okay, and last question. Don't want to spend too long on this one, because we have actually done a fair bit. It's from Handsome Headandry again, and it says, what do you think it means when Bernard says, we don't know how the hosts work?
I think it's just like legacy coding, basically. I think it's kind of like, I work in IT. When you come into a new company, you see the code base, and there's always stuff that's been written either in languages you don't know or frameworks you don't know that just exists and isn't touched and is left alone because it works. And I suspect that's what's happened here. Like the original code that fundamentally makes the hosts work was written by a genius who I suspect realized what he had done, created life, and didn't want the responsibility of dealing with that. Didn't want to be like, that's too much power for one person to hold, certainly for a company to hold, and so tried to destroy it. I think that's probably going to be what we find out about with Arnold's character. And the fallout from that is that the park essentially runs on this legacy code that can't be updated. You can program stuff on, like, behavior on top of it, but ultimately the actual function of the hosts will remain a mystery for anyone but a genius, and I don't think they've got any of those at the park anymore.
Okay, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, guys, there we go. That is episode 7 of Westworld. We'll be going on to episode 8 next week, so join us. Only 3 more to go in the first season, so really, really looking forward to it. If you haven't subscribed already, give the channel a subscribe. Give us a like as well. It does help. If you want to subscribe on audio apps to listen to us in the car, on a run, or anything like that, we are the After Dark podcast over there, the Culture Cave on YouTube. Thanks very much, guys. support the podcast. Links in the description if you can. If you can't, that's fair enough. And we will catch you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.